Hey everybody, my Patterson Bigfoot Dyatlov Pass series is getting so big, I'm having to chop it into now a fourth episode. So to find all of these, anytime you see my avatar, just click on that. That will bring you to my homepage. Then just start scrolling down. Like for example, here is the members only playlist. And right down here is the Patterson Bigfoot and Dyatlov Pass Mysteries Solved series. Only two in there now, two more to go. Check it out. And on Patreon, same thing. Get to my homepage, and up here at the top, you see Home, Collections. Click on that. And now Patreon finally lets me build playlist collections. So here we go. We've got the Patterson Bigfoot Dyatlov series right here, Proportional D-Day, Sonic Fingerprints. I'll be making more, but check those out. Hey, this is Thugger. Welcome to my part 3 of my Patterson Bigfoot Dyatlov Pass Solve series. It's pretty obvious if you watch my part 1 and part 2 that either science and all of the experts and authors that ever covered the Dyatlov incident either never saw these two photographs, or if they saw them, they just completely ignored everything they saw because it didn't fit the explanation they were selling, or they saw them and were just utterly clueless as to what they were seeing. Let's hope that wasn't the case. But how could anybody who considers themselves an expert on this case, how could they ignore the coroner's report? Because the thing is, we know every single wound those poor 9 kids sustained on that ship. And while you might try to argue against photographic evidence, you can't argue with the coroner's report. You can't argue with wounds. For example, would it surprise you to know that a majority of the wounds were limited to the skull, as in their skulls were crushed in? And what is so incredibly bizarre about that is the tissue surrounding those wounds was unharmed, the skin. How does that happen? Also, eyes and faces and mouths were targeted, and we're not going to get into details there because it gets pretty gruesome. Also, hands received a lot of injury, and specifically knuckles, as if some of the 9 had engaged in hand-to-hand combat. Do you fight off an avalanche? Do you fight off an atomic bomb or a herd of stampeding reindeer? And last, the chest were targeted, as in chest were crushed. And to quote one of the coroners, it's as if some of these kids were in automobile accidents. That's the amount of blunt force trauma they received. But I can promise you, there were no automobiles in 1959 up on these snowy slopes 200 miles from civilization. And of course, there was frostbite to the feet, also to the hands, and general bruising along the arms and sides. That's going to happen when you're out, struggling to save your life. But I'm talking about the mortal wounds were centralized to the head and chest, as if those areas were specifically targeted. So let me just ask you, would an avalanche specifically target the skull, face, chest, and hands of a human? No? Well, then that means that any avalanche theory is out. It's dead. It's ridiculous because you cannot argue with the coroner's report. Okay, how about the nuclear bomb testing in the area? Would nuclear bombs just target these 4 regions on human bodies? No? Then nuclear bomb theory is out. Let's see, what else do we have? The stampeding reindeer, out. Out. First off, search and rescue said there were no reindeer tracks in the area. Let's see, what else do we have? Bear attacks, wolves, any wild animal, all are out because the coroner's report specifically said that there were no bite or claw marks. So all wild animal theories, no matter how bad you want them to be true, are out. That leaves, let's see, we've got the KGB theory, or CIA, or indigenous tribes came in here and killed these kids because they were trespassing. Again, search and rescue said there were no tracks coming in from out of this area suggesting that some group came in here and killed the kids. So all of those group theories are gone. They are out. One of my favorites is the katabatic wind theory proposed by science. And there we had a magical windstorm that turns up low frequency sound waves that was said to, in the middle of the night, it drove those kids crazy. And that's why they ran naked in the snow and all of that. So would low frequency sound waves or magical winds target skulls, faces, chest, or hands? No. Then the katabatic wind theory is out. And my final favorite, again, proposed by science, is gravity itself got weak here on the mountain that night, and some of the kids literally floated up in the air and then crashed back down to the earth, and that's how they sustained these massive wounds. But let me ask you this. How could gravity being weak or any of the above have crushed in skulls and chest without damaging the outer skin? They couldn't. Therefore, every single widely accepted theory as to what happened to these kids is out because it either does not align with the coroner's report or what the search and rescue reported. And let me just say, 9 young people tragically lost their lives. That is a terrible thing. I write about that in my book, Solved. But when science proposes these over-the-top, insulting, ridiculous explanations for this, I have no choice but to fight fire with fire. Last question. Is it at least possible that our 9 young extreme weather survivalists encountered a large, aggressive, unknown by science species on that expedition? And I would say, yeah. Frame 17, we're looking at one right here. I covered that in detail in part 2, so go check that out. So yes, that's possible. Is it also possible that one or more of those large black figures here followed our 9 up onto the slope and appeared that night and made themselves known? Maybe they were objecting to the fact that these guys were up there on their turf. Maybe they were just up there out of curiosity. Who knows? But as somebody who's been on the business end of one of these things screaming at me and a buddy from about, say, 40 to 60 feet away out in the trees one night out on a river, I can tell you it will profoundly change your life forever. Could it make you go running naked into the snow? Absolutely, it could do that. It's a sound that you feel in your gut. It is the stuff nightmares are made of. So yes, I can tell you, as well as a lot of other people can, that is very possible. So is it possible that one or more of these was upslope from our kids and started screaming? And so our kids, frightened out of their minds, afraid to even bother getting dressed, and instead of running out of the front of their tent and risk being seen, they cut their way out of the side of the tent. And then they calmly, according to search and rescue, snuck off down the slope to the trees a mile below. It is at least possible that that is how this all happened. So now we have a theory that not only explains all of the bizarre happenings up on the slope that night, but also aligns perfectly with the bizarre injuries on the coroner's report. So when one explanation is the answer to everything, it has to be considered. All right, now let's go see how this thing is a non-human. Here we go.